Ever feel like your mind is a never-ending hamster wheel of what-ifs? You lie in bed, hoping sleep will come, but instead, your thoughts pace the floor like anxious night guards. What if I messed up that message? What if I forgot to lock the door? What if tomorrow is just too much? That internal noise, buzzing, spiraling, interrogating, it isn't just you. It's ancient. Deeply, inconveniently ancient. See, your brain was designed for jungle threats, not inbox zero. Thousands of years ago, overthinking was less about your ex liking someone else's photo and more about staying alive. Was that rustle in the bushes a predator? Is that person in my tribe mad at me? Thinking, rethinking, overthinking? That's how you stayed breathing. Here's a shocking truth: your mind's non-stop chatter isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature. One that helped your ancestors avoid snakebites and social exile. But now, in the age of smartwatches and streaming, that same feature just keeps you up at 2:17 a.m. wondering if your boss meant something by using a period instead of an exclamation mark. Picture this: your brain as an overeager intern who thinks it's still working in a hunter-gatherer firm. Every vague feeling of unease? It treats like a lion in the tall grass. So it keeps sending you alerts. Problem is, the modern world gives it way too much material to work with. You probably won't know this, but research in evolutionary psychology shows that our brains still prioritize perceived threats over rewards, even minor threats like ambiguous feedback. This hardwiring makes your mind fixate on negativity, scan for problems, and rerun scenarios like it's editing a blooper reel. And here's the kicker: the same systems that helped us spot danger are now bombarded by emails, deadlines, passive-aggressive emojis, and existential dread about the climate. You're not broken. You're just biologically misaligned with modern life. Before you settle in, feel free to like the video if it brought you a little peace, and if you'd like to join us again, we'd love to have you back. Subscribe when you're ready. No pressure, just rest. Share something if you feel like it. Let's slowly drift into tonight's quiet moments together. Your thoughts don't start loud. They tiptoe in. Maybe I should've, or did I remember to, or why didn't I say? And before you know it, you're 6 layers deep in mental Jenga. This monkey mind, jumping from one branch of worry to another, has been your species' alarm system for millennia. In one famous study on attentional bias, researchers found that people are quicker to notice angry or threatening faces in a crowd than neutral or happy ones. Why? Because spotting danger used to mean survival. Your brain is a master threat detector. Unfortunately, now it just overdoes it, like a smoke detector that goes off every time you make toast. Here's something interesting: Buddhist monks coined the term monkey mind over 2,000 years ago. Even back then, people were struggling with mental chatter. Imagine someone in a robe, sitting under a tree, thinking, why did I call him wise when I meant enlightened? Ugh. Overthinking has always been with us. There remains considerable disagreement about how much of overthinking is innate versus learned. Some argue it's hardwired. Others believe society trains us into it, with constant comparisons, the pressure to perform, and the illusion that we can control outcomes if we just think enough. But for now, know this: your mind evolved to protect you. Even now, it's trying to help. It just doesn't know how to differentiate a missed text from a missed spear. A strange detail? Studies show that people with higher working memory capacity tend to overthink more. Yes, having a better brain sometimes just means more brain to fill with unnecessary loops. You get more RAM, but no off switch. As your thoughts spiral, your body listens. Your heart rate ticks up, your jaw clenches, your breathing shortens, because your system thinks a saber tooth is around the corner. But it's not. It's just that email you haven't replied to. Or a weird tone in a text. Or a comment someone made in passing, 4 days ago. You try to think your way out of the spiral, but your brain responds by giving you more to think about. Like asking a toddler to calm down by explaining taxes. Not helpful. So tonight, we begin unlearning that reflex. Gently. Not by shutting your mind off, because you can't. But by understanding where this loop begins. By tracing it back to that ancient system working overtime. You don't need to fight it. You just need to see it clearly. Close your eyes. Or don't. Just soften your gaze. Notice your breath for a moment. Nothing fancy, just in, then out. That small act? It already starts to signal to your nervous system, hey, we're not being chased. We're okay. Let's be honest, your brain's doing its best with a job it was never trained for. It's like asking a fire alarm to detect the difference between a candle and a wildfire. Of course it goes off at the wrong times. So we're not silencing the monkey mind. We're befriending it. You don't need it to vanish. You just need it to stop screaming over every potential outcome that hasn't even happened. Here's a soft truth, your thoughts are not facts. They are weather. They pass. Some stormy, some sunny, all temporary. That shift in energy leads us into something else, because once the monkey mind activates, it rarely stops at one branch. It builds a whole jungle gym of loops. And that brings us right into the next quiet layer, the trap of looping thoughts, and why they feel so addictive. You ever catch yourself thinking the same thought 5 different ways before lunch? Like you're rewriting a text in your head that you never planned to send, rehearsing a conversation from last week that didn't go wrong, but somehow might have? That's the loop. The thought loop trap. And once you're in it, your mind starts running laps around itself. Here's the trickiest part, looping thoughts often wear a disguise. They show up looking productive. Like you're problem solving. Like you're just being thorough. You might even tell yourself, I'm just trying to be prepared. But underneath, it's anxiety wrapped in a business suit. And you're probably not solving anything, you're just circling the drain with more impressive vocabulary. In psychology, this pattern is called rumination. And it's not just poetic. It's a real cognitive process, deeply studied. In one foundational study, researchers found that people prone to rumination are more likely to develop depressive symptoms over time. Why? Because the mind doesn't differentiate between thinking and reliving. The more you think about a past mistake or future fear, the more real and immediate it feels. Your brain doesn't know you're just remembering. It reacts like it's happening again. So if you keep running through what you should have said in that meeting, your body might tense up, your breath might tighten, and boom, you're back in that awkward moment, emotionally, even if it was weeks ago. Here's something quirky, cows ruminate too. Literally. The word ruminate comes from how cows chew cud, they regurgitate their food and chew it over and over. Charming, right? And oddly accurate. That's what your brain does with stressful thoughts. It spits them back up just when you thought they were gone. A long-standing controversy surrounds whether rumination serves any adaptive purpose. Some argue it helps with emotional processing and learning. Others say it's a mental glitch that only amplifies suffering. But the consensus is clear about one thing, it's all about the duration. The longer you loop, the less helpful it gets. And looping thoughts aren't just about anxiety. They show up in guilt, grief, embarrassment, even fake arguments you win in the shower. You know those ones. You always have the perfect comeback after the moment's over. Next time, I'll say that. But next time never plays out the same way. You might find this surprising, even happy events can spark loops. You overanalyze a compliment. You replay a date to dissect every smile. It's like your brain goes, what was the hidden message behind this entirely pleasant interaction? Your loops usually fall into one of 2 timelines, the past, where regret lives, or the future, where fear plays. What you rarely loop on is the present. The here and now is strangely boring to the overthinking mind. It's too quiet. Too simple. Not enough material. And so the loop feeds itself. You think more, so you feel more, so you think again. And each round tightens the knot. There's a term in cognitive behavioral therapy called thought-action fusion. It describes how people sometimes confuse thinking something with doing it. Like, if you think a scary thought, it must mean something bad is going to happen, or worse, that it already has. Your brain can't always tell the difference between internal events and external ones. You can feel that. You might sit still, eyes closed, not moving at all, and yet be mentally exhausted from the marathon of worry you've been running. Your brain's like, congratulations, you just relived 8th grade and imagined getting fired and wrote a script for your next breakup. All before bedtime. The issue has sparked significant intellectual debate. Are looping thoughts a symptom of a deeper mental health disorder, or are they just the byproduct of a highly active, intelligent brain? Some studies suggest that people with high verbal IQs ruminate more. It's not that they're smarter because they overthink, it's that their minds are better at creating stories. Unfortunately, some of those stories are horror films set in their inbox. So, what do you do when the loop starts? Not what you think. You don't analyze why you're looping. That's just another loop. You gently label it. Ah. Looping again. No judgment. Like spotting a cloud. Then you shift your attention to something real. A texture. A sound. Your breath. Anything your senses can hook onto. Your mind doesn't like being bored, but it can be gently redirected. Here's a quirky little technique. Try humming. Literally hum to yourself. It vibrates the vagus nerve, slows your heart rate, and shifts your attention from mental noise to physical sensation. You won't find that in most psychology textbooks, but some therapists swear by it. Plus, you get to sound like a mildly confused refrigerator, which is kind of charming. Even a slow blink can break the loop. You blink, you breathe, you pause. That pause is power. It's the mental equivalent of walking out of a room where someone won't stop talking. Now, looping doesn't stop overnight. It's like a muscle memory. But every time you notice it, every time you soften instead of spiral, you're rewiring your brain a little. Neurons that fire together, wire together. So if you often pair thoughts with panic, that becomes a track. But if you start pairing thoughts with breath, stillness, noticing, well, that becomes the new groove. Tonight, don't try to stop your thoughts. Just notice when they loop. Gently. Like you're watching laundry spin and thinking, ah yes, the usual spin cycle. And now that we've seen how the loop tightens, our next step is understanding why it begins in the first place. Often, the answer is hiding under a very human illusion, the belief that if you think enough, you'll control the outcome. That myth of control is where we're headed next. You like to think that if you just analyze the situation enough, run every possible outcome, rehearse every line, and predict every variable, you'll finally be safe. You'll make the right choice. Say the perfect thing. Avoid the worst-case scenario. But here's the rub, you're not chasing clarity. You're chasing control. And control is slippery. It promises calm, but delivers anxiety on a silver platter. The myth of control is what overthinking feeds on. You want to believe that with enough mental effort, you can steer everything, every conversation, every feeling, every reaction, into a perfect little lane. But that's like trying to plan the ocean. You can map out every wave and still get soaked. There's a common idea in cognitive science called the illusion of control. In one classic study, participants were asked to roll dice and told they had more influence over the outcome if they threw harder. Rationally, it made no sense. But emotionally, it gave them a sense of agency. Your brain wants to feel like it has a handle on things, even when it doesn't. So you think. You plan. You rehearse. You micromanage your own imagination. All in hopes that you'll never be caught off guard. Here's something interesting, even toddlers show signs of this bias. Give a 2-year-old a toy that doesn't respond the way they expect, and watch how frustrated they get. Early on, we learn that unpredictability feels uncomfortable, and the smarter we are, the more creative our attempts to manage it. But no matter how long you pace the mental hallways, the truth stays the same: control is a comfort blanket made of smoke. The more tightly you grip it, the less secure you feel. There remains considerable disagreement about whether this illusion evolved for survival or is a flaw in reasoning. Some psychologists argue it helped early humans feel empowered in a chaotic world. Others suggest it's a mental byproduct, a side effect of overactive pattern recognition systems. Either way, the result is the same: your brain craves control like candy. And like candy, too much of it rots your mental teeth. You might find this surprising. People who score high on locus of control assessments, meaning they believe they can influence their own lives, often enjoy greater happiness and resilience. But when that belief becomes obsessive, when it turns into, I must control everything or else, it mutates into anxiety. And anxiety loves to dress up like responsibility. It whispers, you're just being proactive. But really, it's trying to eliminate all uncertainty. And uncertainty is part of everything. Even your next breath has no guarantee. That's not meant to scare you, just to gently remind you that life isn't a test you can ace with enough studying. So, what happens when your mind clings to control? You start scanning for danger. Constantly. You rehearse responses in conversations you haven't had yet. You worry about outcomes that haven't even formed. You try to game the future like it's a board you can win with the right moves. But life doesn't follow a script, it improvises. Here's a quirky fact: researchers found that people tend to overestimate their influence in random chance games. You're not alone in this. Even seasoned gamblers believe their choices can change the luck. Your brain just hates not having a handle on what's next. So the next time you find yourself spiraling with, what if, pause and ask, is this helping me feel prepared, or just trying to feel in control? That small distinction can shift everything. You may even notice how exhausting it is. Holding the wheel of a car that's already on autopilot, gripping it tighter and tighter, even though the road keeps turning no matter what you do. Here's where it gets soft. You don't have to earn rest by solving everything. You don't need to prove your worth by preempting disaster. You're allowed to let go of the wheel. Not out of apathy, but out of trust. You don't stop caring. You stop controlling. And they're not the same. There's a peaceful kind of surrender that comes when you say, I'll do what I can, and let the rest be. That's not giving up. That's growing wise. That's calming the part of you that's been on high alert since the first caveman tried to predict the weather with a bone. To help rewire this tendency, one practice is called worry postponement. Sounds weird, but it works. You schedule a 10-minute window every day to worry, like a meeting with your inner control freak. During the rest of the day, if a worry pops up, you mentally file it under save for later. Often, by the time your worry meeting arrives, you'll have forgotten half of them. Another gentle trick: name the part of you that wants control. Give it a nickname. There's Planner Patty again, rewriting tomorrow's lunch meeting. Humor softens the grip. And when you catch yourself trying to mentally choreograph every possible future, exhale. Seriously, just let out a slow breath. Breathing is one of the few systems you can control that also tells your body it's safe. It's like a backdoor hack into calm. Because once you stop wrestling with the illusion of control, something else opens up. A freedom. A softness. A little more room to breathe. That shift in mindset takes us gently toward the next mask that overthinking wears: perfectionism. The polished, high-achieving twin of control. The one that tells you everything must be just right, or it doesn't count. Let's slip quietly into that next reflection. You tell yourself you're just aiming for excellence. You want to get it right. You want to do your best. That sounds noble, even admirable, but what if I told you perfectionism is just overthinking in a tuxedo? Polished, impressive, socially acceptable, and secretly exhausting. Perfectionism sneaks in under the banner of high standards. It convinces you that anything less than flawless isn't good enough. But beneath that glossy surface, it's fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of failure. Fear of being seen as not enough. You probably won't know this, but psychologists often distinguish between adaptive and maladaptive perfectionism. The first kind can motivate you. Think organized calendars, color-coded notes, double-checking your work. The second? That's the trap. That's when every project feels like a test, every mistake feels fatal, and every pause feels like laziness. In one long-term study, researchers linked maladaptive perfectionism to increased risk of anxiety disorders, depression, and even burnout. Because here's the thing, when your inner critic demands perfect, it doesn't accept rest. It doesn't allow good enough. It has no finish line. You finish a project and immediately wonder if you should have done more. You send an email and reread it 6 times to make sure your tone was just right. You hesitate to start something unless you already know how to do it flawlessly. That's not high standards. That's fear disguised as productivity. An odd but true fact. Some studies suggest perfectionism is rising generationally. Young adults today report significantly higher perfectionist tendencies than previous decades. Social media doesn't help. Constantly comparing yourself to curated highlight reels will do that. And this ties into an old debate in the psychology world. Is perfectionism a personality trait or a coping mechanism? Is it hardwired, or is it learned behavior rooted in childhood experiences? Some say it's temperament. Others argue it's a response to conditional love, praise only when you perform. Maybe for you, it was a parent's approval. A gold star. The quiet pressure of being the responsible one. But perfectionism doesn't just show up in work or school. It creeps into how you show up for others. You replay conversations, wondering if you said the wrong thing. You question if you were supportive enough. And sometimes, it gets so overwhelming, you procrastinate entirely. Why start if you can't do it perfectly? This is called perfection paralysis. It's the frozen state between intention and action, where fear of imperfection stalls you. It's that moment you stare at a blank page, wanting to write the perfect sentence before even typing a word. You might find this surprising. Perfectionists actually make more errors under pressure than people who are less perfectionistic. Not because they're less capable, but because the anxiety of getting it just right clouds their ability to perform. Your brain tightens, focus narrows, and creativity, well, it runs for the hills. There's also the constant what if soundtrack. What if I mess this up? What if they think less of me? What if this isn't enough? It's like your inner voice is part-time quality control, part-time drama queen. And when perfectionism doesn't feel like a loud voice, it can sneak in as avoidance. You avoid difficult conversations because you're scared of saying the wrong thing. You avoid new opportunities because you're afraid of being mediocre. You avoid taking breaks because somewhere in your bones, rest feels like failure. Here's something to sit with: perfection isn't connection. People don't love you for your flawlessness, they love you for your presence. Your awkward jokes. Your random tan. Your quiet kindness when no one's watching. None of that requires a gold star. To soften perfectionism, you don't need to become careless. You just need to become curious. Ask, what would it feel like to be human instead of perfect today? Small experiments help. Send the message without rereading. Cook the meal without looking up reviews for 3 hours. Wear the outfit that makes you happy, not the one that feels the most polished. And there's a technique you might try: planned imperfection. Do something intentionally a little off. Leave a tiny typo in your notes. Wear mismatched socks. Share something online without filtering it to death. It's not about being messy, it's about building tolerance. Letting your nervous system see that the world doesn't collapse when you drop the act. Because when you let go of perfection, you make room for rest. For joy. For trying new things without the weight of being brilliant at them. There's also something called self-compassion practice, pioneered by psychologist Kristin Neff. The idea is simple but powerful: talk to yourself the way you talk to a dear friend. When you fall short, instead of criticizing yourself, try offering kindness. That was hard. You tried your best. You're still growing. The brain responds. Self-compassion reduces cortisol levels and increases resilience. It's like giving your nervous system a cup of tea and a soft blanket. So tonight, maybe try saying to yourself, it's okay to be unfinished. Because it is. Life isn't a test you ace or fail, it's more like art. It evolves. It smudges. And sometimes, the imperfection is where the beauty lives. Let's take that softness with us into the next chapter, where the voice behind perfectionism starts getting louder. The inner critic. You know the one. The peanut gallery in your head with a lot of opinions and zero empathy. Let's turn the light gently toward it next. You know that voice. The one that pipes up at the worst times. You finally sit down to rest, and it whispers, "Shouldn't you be doing something productive?" You try something new, and it mutters, "Well, that was embarrassing." You finish a task, and it shrugs, "Could have been better." That's your inner critic. And oh, does it love to talk. Sometimes it sounds like you. Sometimes it sounds like someone from your past. A parent. A coach. A teacher. A bully. It doesn't shout. It needn't. It slips in like background music, low, constant, insistent. It doesn't even have to be cruel to do damage. Sometimes it just asks the wrong question at the wrong time. Why aren't you more like them? Psychologists call this internal dialogue negative self-talk, and it plays a central role in anxiety and depression. According to cognitive behavioral theory, the thoughts we repeat to ourselves shape our emotions and behaviors. If your inner dialogue is a playlist of "not good enough, try harder," and "you messed up," then that's the emotional climate you live in. One mainstream study found that the average person has thousands of thoughts per day. Some estimates go as high as 60,000, and the majority are negative and repetitive. Not because we're broken, but because, again, survival. Negative thoughts kept you alert to threats. Your brain evolved to notice danger, not delight. But here's a quirky fact: in Tibetan Buddhism, there's a word, shenpa, that roughly translates to the hook. It's that moment right before you get pulled into a spiral. The split second when the inner critic makes its first whisper. Catching the hook is everything. The sooner you notice it, the easier it is to step away. There remains considerable disagreement about whether the inner critic is a learned pattern from early experiences or a universal cognitive habit. Some theorists see it as internalized authority, absorbed from caregivers or culture. Others argue it's simply how we process complexity and keep ourselves in line. Either way, it's persistent. And it loves to show up when you're tired, vulnerable, or trying something new. Your critic doesn't take weekends off. It shows up at 2 a.m. with a clipboard and a disapproving eyebrow. Sometimes the critic pretends it's helping. "I'm just trying to motivate you," it says. "If I let up, you'll fall apart." But studies have shown that self-criticism reduces motivation, while self-compassion actually increases it. You don't grow from being attacked. You grow when you feel safe enough to try again. You might find this surprising. MRI studies show that harsh self-talk activates the brain's pain centers in the same way physical harm does. In other words, your thoughts can hurt like a punch, and your body doesn't always know the difference. So how do you deal with this invisible heckler? First, you name it. Give it a persona. Make it something separate. Ah, there's critical Carl again. That little bit of distance helps you see the voice for what it is, a script, not a truth. Second, you respond with curiosity. Instead of arguing or agreeing, try asking, "Is this helpful?" or "What would I say to a friend who was thinking this?" That disrupts the auto loop and invites kindness into the room. One powerful technique from ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, is called cognitive diffusion. You practice unhooking from thoughts by noticing them without engaging. For example, instead of thinking, "I'm a failure," you say, "I'm having the thought that I'm a failure." Just that phrase, "I'm having the thought that," creates space. Space is where healing starts. Another gentle practice? Write down the critic's script. Actually put it on paper. When you see it written out, it often loses its grip. You realize how repetitive, exaggerated, and unoriginal it really is. Like a bad movie you've watched too many times. And here's something unexpectedly sweet: that inner critic. It often formed to protect you. As a child, maybe criticism kept you striving, kept you safe, helped you avoid punishment or rejection. It's outdated now, but the intention might have been safety. Doesn't mean it's right. But when you see it as scared, not evil, it gets quieter. Imagine sitting next to that voice instead of inside it. You, in your cozy chair, sipping tea. The critic beside you, pacing with a clipboard. But now you're the observer, not the victim. You listen. You nod. You say, "Thanks for the input, but I've got this." And if the critic gets louder? Breathe. Hum. Stretch. Remember, thoughts are not facts. They're passing weather. And you? You're the sky. The critic will visit again. That's okay. But now you'll recognize the tone, the pace, the push. And instead of obeying, you'll pause. You'll notice. And maybe even chuckle. Oh, it's you again. And when you're not under its spell, something new opens up. A freedom to act, to rest, to create, without the need for constant approval. And that brings us to another flavor of overthinking. The one where every decision feels like a moral test. Where you hesitate between two pasta sauces and wonder if this choice will somehow define your destiny. Yep, we're talking about decision paralysis. Next up. You know the drill. You stare at two nearly identical options, brands of toothpaste, job applications, text messages you're rewriting for the 8th time, and somehow the stakes feel enormous. You toggle back and forth, circle the block one more time, scroll endlessly, and think, what if I choose wrong? That right there is decision paralysis, the overthinker's companion, and it's more common than you think. Not because you're indecisive. Not because you're incapable. But because your brain is so busy trying to optimize, it forgets to live. You want to make the right choice, the best one. The one with no regrets, no risk, no ambiguity. The perfect answer. And that's where the trouble starts. Because often, no such option exists. And your brain, left unsatisfied, loops harder. One foundational study by psychologist Barry Schwartz introduced the term, the paradox of choice. The idea is simple: having too many options doesn't make us happier, it makes us anxious. People facing more decisions tend to experience less satisfaction and more regret, even after choosing. Sound familiar? So yes, the abundance of options can actually rob you of peace. You want to find the right dinner, but 38,000 restaurant results later, you're eating cereal over the sink. Or you stand in front of your closet like you're choosing an outfit for a Supreme Court hearing, not just going to the grocery store. Just a quirky detail. In jam tasting experiments, yes, jam, shoppers offered fewer flavors were more likely to buy a jar, and reported higher satisfaction afterward. Fewer options equals less mental clutter. A long-standing controversy surrounds whether indecisiveness is a personality trait or a result of environmental overload. Some researchers see it as rooted in neuroticism or low confidence. Others say it's a side effect of modern life: too much information, too little guidance, and way too much pressure to make the right call. And underneath it all, again, is fear. Fear of failure. Fear of disappointment. Fear of regret. You think if you weigh everything perfectly, you'll avoid pain. But often, the real pain comes from not choosing at all. Because decision paralysis doesn't just drain time, it drains energy. Even tiny decisions can build up into what researchers call decision fatigue. You burn through mental fuel with every choice, so by the time you get to something important, you're already worn out. That's why Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day. It wasn't a fashion statement, it was a strategy. You might find this surprising. Judges in a study were more likely to grant parole early in the day, when their decision-making energy was fresh. As the day wore on, denials increased. Why? Fatigue. When we're tired, we default to safer, easier answers, which often means no decision at all. That hesitation you feel? It's your brain trying to run every simulation, protect your reputation, and maintain your identity, all while pretending it's just about which movie to watch. No wonder it feels so intense. Here's something soft: not choosing is a choice. A slow one. A stressful one. A choice to stay stuck in limbo. And limbo is not peace, it's tension wearing a bathrobe. So how do you get unstuck? First, lower the stakes. Remind yourself, most choices aren't permanent. Pick the toothpaste. You're not signing a treaty. If it's awful, you can switch. The drama your mind creates rarely matches reality. Second, try this tiny practice: limit your options. Give yourself 3 and pick one. Or flip a coin, not to obey it, but to notice your gut reaction. Heads, you order sushi. Tails, pizza. But as the coin spins, your body leans toward what you actually want. That's useful intel. Another tool? The good enough mindset. Instead of aiming for perfect, aim for functional. Effective. Decent. Would you rather make a perfect choice in 4 hours or a good one in 4 minutes? Life moves. You should too. You can also try setting a decision timer. I'll give myself 5 minutes to choose, and then I move forward. It sounds simple, but giving yourself permission to stop deliberating can save you hours of hidden stress. And when you truly don't know what to pick, ask, what choice feels more aligned, not just safer? Sometimes, the right decision is the one that feels honest. Sometimes it's the one that lets you breathe. Because beneath decision paralysis is often a hidden truth: you want to be loved, respected, seen. You want to make the right call because you think it reflects who you are. But here's the reality: your worth doesn't hang on a single moment. You are more than your choices. You are how you show up in them. And yes, overthinkers often carry the weight of wanting to get it right for everyone. You don't just consider your own needs. You pre-plan reactions, anticipate feelings, and try to dodge disappointment for others. But that's too heavy a load. Tonight, let yourself breathe lighter. Not every decision is a final exam. Not every option needs 15 tabs and a spreadsheet. Sometimes the most peaceful choice is simply any choice. And that peace? That confidence? It grows stronger the more you practice moving forward, not perfectly, but intentionally. As your body settles and your thoughts begin to slow, we move into another very human spiral, when overthinking turns social. When your brain replays conversations, overanalyzes pauses, and turns one side eye from someone into an entire novella of possible judgments. Let's gently step into that spiral next. You leave a gathering, or end a call, or walk away from someone's slightly weird smile, and boom. Your brain hits replay. Was I too loud? Did I talk too much? Why did I make that weird joke about yogurt? And just like that, you're spiraling through the social overthinking loop, where every interaction becomes a courtroom drama in your head, complete with dramatic reenactments and harsh cross-examinations. It's exhausting. You know it's probably not that deep. You tell yourself, no one noticed. But then your brain responds with, are you sure? Remember that one person's face when you laughed? It was too long. This is what psychologists call post-event processing. It's a hallmark of social anxiety. After a social interaction, your mind replays it in painful slow motion, scrutinizing every word, tone, gesture, and micro-expression, usually your own, rarely anyone else's. In one study, participants with social anxiety were asked to reflect on a recent conversation. They recalled significantly more embarrassing moments than observers noticed. Translation: you're likely being way harder on yourself than anyone else ever would be. And here's the kicker: this kind of mental review isn't useful. It rarely helps you grow. It just feeds self-doubt. You're not solving anything. You're just reliving it, over and over, with increasingly dramatic edits. Just a quirky fact: in Japanese, there's a word, jijitoki, that loosely translates to the skill of imagining things that didn't happen. It's a humorous way of acknowledging how your mind creates whole storylines out of silence. That look someone gave you? Maybe they were thinking about lunch. Maybe they had gas. Your brain? They hate me now. There remains considerable disagreement among researchers about how much of social overthinking is caused by personal insecurities versus environmental pressures. Some argue it's fueled by past experiences, bullying, rejection, shame. Others point to the hypersocial, hypervisible nature of our current world. Always being watched, liked, commented on. Social media gives your inner critic a megaphone. You might find this surprising. Studies show that people generally overestimate how much others notice or remember them, a phenomenon known as the spotlight effect. Your brain assumes a spotlight is on you, when most people are too busy starring in their own mental plays to notice yours. But social overthinking isn't just about anxiety. It can stem from empathy, too. You care how others feel. You want to connect. You want to be understood. That's beautiful. But when that concern becomes obsession, you lose sight of reality, and of your own peace. Think about this. How many times has someone said something a little awkward to you, and you just forgot about it? You moved on. You didn't judge. You didn't replay it. What if others are doing the same with your moments? Here's a gentle practice. After a social interaction, ask yourself, what went right? Your brain is trained to scan for awkwardness. Counterbalance that. Did you smile? Did someone laugh? Did you ask a good question? Let your mind hold both the clunky and the kind moments. And try this technique from compassion-focused therapy. Visualize your younger self, awkward, wide-eyed, trying to make friends. Now imagine them saying, "Did I ruin everything by being weird today?" What would you say? Probably something like, "No, sweetie. You were just being human." That same compassion applies to you, right now. One way to gently rewire the loop is by practicing social media hygiene. Not just what you post, but how much you scroll, compare, and second-guess. Constant exposure to other people's polished lives and witty captions can trick your brain into thinking everyone else has it figured out, and you're the only one fumbling. They don't. Everyone fumbles. Just not on camera. Also, your brain isn't built for this much input. You were designed to live in tribes of 150 people max. Now you're exposed to thousands, likes, comments, texts, emojis, silent read receipts, and your poor amygdala thinks every interaction is a referendum on your belonging. So what do you do when the spiral starts? First, notice the narrative. Is it specific or vague? "I sounded stupid" is vague. "I mispronounced that word and felt embarrassed" is specific. Specificity grounds you. Vague self-judgment inflates the shame balloon. Second, try a mental close the tab moment. Like on a browser. Say, "That social moment is over. I'm choosing not to review it again." The more you practice this line, the easier it becomes to redirect your thoughts. Another trick? Ask yourself, would I say this to a friend? Often, the answer is no. You'd never tell someone else, you probably ruined that hangout by smiling too much. But your inner critic? Oh, it says stuff like that all the time. And here's the thing, awkwardness is not failure. It's proof that you showed up. That you risked connection. That you're alive and trying. The people who matter will love you anyway. Maybe even because of your weird joke about yogurt. So tonight, give yourself permission to leave the replay behind. Trust that people are far less focused on your flaws than your anxious brain suggests. Trust that social grace isn't about perfection, it's about presence. And now that we've explored how overthinking warps your memories and social energy, let's go even deeper, into how your body responds to mental noise. Because all those looping thoughts, they don't just stay in your head. They echo through your muscles, your sleep, your stomach. Let's drift down into the physical side of overthinking next. You think it's just in your head, these endless thoughts, those spirals and what-ifs. But your body knows better. It listens. It absorbs. It reacts. Overthinking isn't a silent storm, it's a full-body event. And if you've ever had a tension headache without lifting a single weight, or felt exhausted after a day of doing nothing, then you've felt the physical weight of mental noise. Let's start with the most common messenger, muscle tension. The clenched jaw. The shoulders that somehow creep up toward your ears by 3 p.m. The gut that churns even though you haven't eaten anything questionable. Overthinking tightens you. It compresses your body like it's trying to contain your swirling thoughts. And that tightness becomes its own feedback loop. Your brain thinks, my body feels tense. Something must be wrong. And so, it spirals harder. In one mainstream study, researchers found that people experiencing chronic worry also showed higher levels of physical stress markers, heart rate, cortisol, muscle rigidity, even during rest. Translation: your body is working overtime to prepare for danger, even if the danger is just an unanswered text. Here's something interesting. People often underestimate how much their posture affects their mental state. When you're hunched, your brain picks up on it. It interprets the physical slump as defeat, shame, or fear. Sit upright, not rigid, just open, and you actually help signal to your nervous system, hey, we're okay. Just like how smiling a little can trick your brain into softening. Now, sleep. You know how it goes. You're exhausted. You want to sleep. But the moment your head hits the pillow, your thoughts start holding a late-night talk show. And of course, they're loud. Thoughts from 5 years ago. Conversations that never happened. Vivid scenes of imaginary failure. It's not insomnia, it's a full-scale mental committee meeting. An odd but true fact, your brain becomes more emotionally reactive in the hours before bed. That's due to shifts in your prefrontal cortex activity, which regulates logic and impulse control. Less activity there means your late-night thoughts tend to skew dramatic and, frankly, unhelpful. That one email you forgot to send? Suddenly it becomes the reason you think your life is spiraling. There's also the gut-brain axis, a fun term that means your digestive system and your brain talk to each other constantly. Overthinking can affect digestion, appetite, even your immune response. You feel it in the stomach flip before a big conversation, or the weird bloating during stress. Your gut has its own nervous system, nicknamed the second brain. It processes anxiety right alongside your thoughts. You might find this surprising. A large portion of your body's serotonin, the feel-good neurotransmitter, is produced in the gut. So when you're anxious or locked in thought loops, it's not just a mental disruption, it's a biological one. That racing mind might just be throwing off your digestive rhythm too. And here's the sensory toll. When you're overthinking, your senses dull. You stop noticing the smell of dinner. You miss the warmth of your blanket. You don't taste your tea. Your mind is too loud to hear the present moment whispering. Over time, this numbs your joy. And that numbing convinces you that something must be wrong, which leads to more thinking. There remains considerable disagreement in research about whether these bodily symptoms cause anxious thoughts or are caused by them. The chicken or egg problem. But in practice, it doesn't matter. Because breaking the loop can happen from either end. Start with the body. Your thoughts might resist. They'll say, this won't fix it. Ignore that. Do the gentle thing anyway. Stretch your jaw. Drop your shoulders. Put your hand on your chest and feel it rise. Go slower. Take 3 deep breaths, not performative ones, but the kind that gently reach your belly. That kind of breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system, your body's rest and digest mode. It's like telling your whole system, we're not in danger. We're allowed to soften. Try a body scan meditation. Close your eyes, or don't, and bring attention slowly from your toes upward. You're not trying to change anything, just notice. Where's the tension? Where's the warmth? What parts of you are asking for attention? This shifts the spotlight from your inner narrator to your actual self. And if meditation sounds like too much, try movement. Not a workout. Not punishment. Just movement. Walk slowly. Sway to music. Shake out your arms. Even yawning, yes, yawning, can help your nervous system downshift. Another quirky tip. Chewing gum. Research suggests it can reduce stress and improve focus. The rhythmic motion calms your brain, kind of like rocking yourself back into the moment. It's small, but when you're stuck in overthinking, small physical resets can be powerful. Because here's the truth, your brain will believe your body faster than your logic. You can't outthink a panic spiral. But you can breathe, stretch, hum, or walk your way through it. And once your body feels safe, your thoughts begin to follow. Not immediately. Not perfectly. But slowly. Like steam lifting from a kettle. So tonight, if your mind won't quiet down, don't wrestle it. Tend to your body instead. Give it softness. Stillness. Sensation. Let it remember what calm feels like. Because when your body remembers, your brain doesn't have to work so hard. And now that we've looked at how your physical self absorbs your mental load, let's shift into a closer look at your brain itself, specifically, how your anxiety circuits lock into place when your system thinks it's under siege. The neuroscience of overthinking is next, and it's more fascinating than you might expect. Inside your skull, a quiet drama unfolds every time you start to overthink. No sword fights, no explosions, just electrical signals, flickers of activity, and two key players squabbling over how to handle your latest worry. It's a kind of neurological custody battle between your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex, and when you're overthinking, that tension is at an all-time high. The amygdala is your fear center. It's primitive, fast, and extremely sensitive. It doesn't deal in nuance. It just asks, is this safe or not? If it senses danger, physical, emotional, social, it hits the alarm bell. That means faster heart rate, quicker breathing, and a mental rush of worst-case scenarios. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, is your inner executive. It's slower but wiser. It weighs evidence, considers outcomes, does long-term planning. Ideally, the prefrontal cortex steps in, soothes the amygdala, and says, no, we're not dying. It's just a Zoom call. But in moments of stress or chronic overthinking, that connection frays. In fact, one mainstream neuroimaging study found that people with high anxiety show reduced functional connectivity between their prefrontal cortex and their amygdala. Translation: when your fear system lights up, your reasoning system struggles to keep up. So instead of calming down, you spiral. That's why you can know everything's probably fine and still feel like it's not. The feeling part of your brain is outpacing the thinking part. It's like trying to slow down a roller coaster with a post-it note. Good luck. And here's something interesting: the brain doesn't distinguish well between real threats and imagined ones. So when you mentally rehearse failure, embarrassment, or danger, your amygdala activates as if it's happening. Your brain is just trying to keep you alive, even if it has to scare you with your own imagination. There's been ongoing scholarly debate about whether anxiety is a brain imbalance or a learned habit reinforced over time. Some researchers argue it's biological, genetic predisposition, neurochemistry, structural variations. Others say it's mostly about environment and repetition. Reality? It's both. Nature sets the stage, nurture writes the script. And you might find this surprising, even thinking about overthinking can increase amygdala activity. That's called meta-anxiety, anxiety about being anxious. It's the emotional equivalent of yelling at yourself to calm down while waving a giant red flag in your own face. But here's the soft truth: your brain isn't trying to ruin your life. It's just trying to protect you. It learned early that certain thoughts, behaviors, or anticipations helped you stay safe. Now, it's just overdoing its job. Like an overenthusiastic airport sniffer dog who flags every suitcase, just in case. That protective instinct is shaped by past experiences. Maybe you learned that mistakes had consequences. That criticism came quickly. That emotional safety had conditions. Your brain adapted. It built neural highways to anticipate threat and prevent failure. Those pathways became default routes. But brains can change. Neuroplasticity is your quiet superpower. Every time you respond differently, pause instead of panic, breathe instead of spiral, observe instead of react, you teach your brain a new pattern. One way to support that rewiring is through labeling your emotions. Studies show that simply naming what you're feeling, I'm anxious, I'm tense, I'm overwhelmed, reduces amygdala activity and activates the prefrontal cortex. Just naming it helps contain it. Like putting a wild emotion in a small, breathable jar. Another trick? Grounding through the senses. The amygdala is about perception, not logic. So when you give it sensory evidence that you're safe, it listens. Hold something warm. Smell something pleasant. Notice 5 things you can see. These small acts signal, we're here. We're safe. You can stand down. Here's a quirky but true tip: slow blinking, yes, intentionally blinking in slow motion, can reduce sympathetic nervous system activity. Think of it as giving your brain a calm, non-verbal message. If we were truly in danger, we wouldn't have time for this slow-motion eyelid ballet. And let's not forget self-talk. But not the harsh kind. The gentle, internal narrator who says, "You're okay. You're doing your best. This will pass." That voice activates calming regions in the brain and helps restore emotional balance. You don't have to stop your thoughts to calm your brain. You just need to give it a new script. A slower rhythm. A different tone. Think of it like teaching a frantic dog to sit, not by yelling, but by showing, gently, again and again. And here's the hopeful part: the more you practice these shifts, the stronger those calmer neural pathways become. Like a trail in the woods, each time you walk it, it becomes easier to follow. So tonight, if your mind feels fast, remember that your brain is not the enemy. It's a loyal but overprotective friend. And it can learn. Slowly. Kindly. Through softness, not force. Now that we've seen how overthinking wires your brain into a loop, it's time to look outward again, at the world around you. Specifically, how digital overload keeps your nervous system on high alert and your mind in overdrive. Because sometimes, it's not just what's happening in your brain, it's what you're feeding it. Let's ease into that next. You reach for your phone without thinking. Maybe you're waiting in line. Maybe you're just a little bored. Maybe your brain wants something, anything, to fill the silence. And within seconds, your screen lights up. Notifications. News. Updates. Endless scrolling. And your mind, already tired, perks up like it just heard a knock at the door. Welcome to digital overload, one of the quietest, sneakiest culprits behind modern overthinking. It doesn't scream. It pings. It nudges. It distracts just enough to keep your nervous system on a low simmer all day long. You weren't built for this much input. Your ancestors dealt with maybe a few dozen pieces of new information a day. You scroll through hundreds, if not thousands, before breakfast. News headlines. DMs, tweets. Photos of someone's perfect kitchen remodel. Your brain tries to process it all, but there's no pause button. Just more input. More tabs. More reasons to compare, worry, rethink. One major psychology study found that heavy social media users report significantly higher rates of anxiety, insomnia, and indecision. It's not just about screen time, it's about screen content. Each post you see has the potential to spark a thought spiral. Should I be doing that? Do I look like that? Am I falling behind? Your mind doesn't treat digital content as separate from reality, it integrates it. It processes filtered images, headlines, and emojis as social data. It starts trying to decode, solve, compare. And boom, you're back in the loop. Overanalyzing a comment. Rewriting a text. Wondering if the seen, but not replied to means you did something wrong. Here's something interesting. There's a psychological concept called cognitive load, your brain's total processing power at any given moment. Too much load equals impaired focus, memory, and decision-making. You know that feeling when you can't even remember why you opened a tab? That's not forgetfulness. That's cognitive overload. And the multitasking? That's a myth. Studies show your brain doesn't multitask. It switches rapidly between tasks, burning more mental fuel with each jump. Every ping, every tab, every app switch costs a bit of attention. It's like trying to read a book in a nightclub. You can do it, technically, but your brain will be begging for quiet after 2 pages. There remains considerable disagreement among experts about whether tech addiction causes overthinking, or if overthinkers are more prone to digital overload. Some say we seek distraction to avoid our thoughts. Others say the barrage of information is what creates the spiral. As usual, it's a bit of both. You might find this surprising. Push notifications, those cheerful little buzzes, were deliberately designed to trigger your dopamine response. The same chemical loop involved in addiction. App developers figured out that unpredictability keeps you checking. That means your nervous system is stuck in a loop too, always bracing for the next alert. And here's the kicker, even when you're not actively checking, your brain is still anticipating. Has someone replied? Did that post get likes? Should I post something? Even without notifications, your mental tab stays open. And over time, that background noise becomes your default mental setting. But there's good news, you can reclaim that mental space. Not by swearing off technology forever and moving into a cabin with no Wi-Fi, though tempting, but by creating simple mental boundaries. First, turn off non-essential notifications. Seriously. Do you really need to know every time your food app sends a deal? Probably not. Let your brain rest from being poked every 12 minutes. Second, designate no-scroll zones. Not all day, just small pockets. First 30 minutes after waking. Last 30 before bed. Maybe even 1 meal a day without a screen nearby. These moments create what psychologists call white space, a mental pause where your brain can finally breathe. Here's a quirky tip, set your phone display to grayscale for a few hours. No color. It tricks your brain into losing interest. Studies have shown this reduces screen time dramatically. Color equals stimulation. No color equals I'll put this down. Another strategy is a digital sunset, a time in the evening when all screens go off. No hard rules. Just a gentle invitation for your mind to wind down without that constant glow in your face. Swap the screen for soft light, music, silence, or a book with actual pages. Let your nervous system remember what true quiet feels like. And if you're worried about missing out, remember this, real presence never pings. No one will notice if you didn't like their post until tomorrow. Your brain will, though. It'll notice the difference in quiet. It will thank you. Because when you reduce the noise, the thoughts slow. Not disappear, just slow. The mental tabs close. The social pressure softens. You stop comparing your insides to someone else's highlights. You return, slowly, to yourself. And when you give yourself permission to step back from the feed, you discover something quieter waiting beneath, your own thoughts. Not reactions. Not judgments. Just thoughts. Gentle ones. So tonight, maybe try it. Turn down the screen. Turn up the stillness. Let your mind step away from the scroll and back toward your breath. And now that we've disconnected from the digital buzz, let's zoom in on one final trick your mind plays, the belief that every problem needs to be solved, now, perfectly, and all at once. That urge to fix everything before you can rest. Let's gently unravel that next. Your mind loves a good puzzle. It sees a problem and thinks, aha! I can solve this. That part isn't the issue. The issue is when your brain thinks every thought is a problem. Every uncertainty. A crisis. Every feeling. A broken pipe to fix. And suddenly, you're not just thinking, you're problem solving the entire human experience. You've probably felt it, the compulsion to think something through before you let it go. That lingering thought says, I can't relax until I figure this out. Whether it's a vague feeling of unease or a full-blown worry about next Thursday, you feel like peace is only possible after the solution. But here's the twist, some thoughts were never meant to be solved. They're not puzzles. They're clouds. They pass. One foundational study from the University of Sussex found that overanalyzing emotional experiences, especially ambiguous ones, led to increased emotional distress, not clarity. In other words, the more you try to fix how you feel by thinking harder, the more tangled your feelings get. You might find this surprising. Psychologists estimate that up to 90% of the things we worry about never actually happen. That's not because your worrying prevents disaster, it's because your brain invents things to fix so it can feel useful. Problem is, it doesn't know when to stop. There remains considerable disagreement about whether the human tendency to fix and plan is evolutionary or culturally conditioned. Some say early survival required a constant analysis of threats. Others argue that modern society, especially productivity culture, amplifies the belief that action is always better than stillness. Either way, you've likely learned to equate stillness with failure. If you're not actively fixing something, it feels like you're falling behind. So you go into mental project mode, even when you're supposed to be resting. You start solving hypotheticals, imaginary conflicts, emotional theories. And, of course, you never arrive at a finish line. Because some thoughts, they don't resolve. They just want to be felt. But when you treat them like broken machines, you end up stuck in endless diagnostics. Here's a quirky metaphor. Imagine your brain as a well-meaning mechanic. You bring in a balloon. The mechanic inspects it, tightens imaginary bolts, replaces fake parts. But the balloon doesn't need fixing. It just needed to float. That's your thought. Not broken. Not malfunctioning. Just floating through. Sometimes, your mind even starts solving problems it invented. Like spiraling about a mistake you might make, based on a conversation you haven't had, with someone who isn't mad at you. But now you're mapping out apology scripts and potential counterarguments, just in case. That's a lot of mental labor for something that may never exist. And here's where it gets really sneaky. Your brain rewards itself for this behavior. It gives you a false sense of control. It says, well, at least I'm being proactive. But that proactivity often looks more like spinning wheels in mental mud. To soften this loop, try this. Notice when you're solving versus spiraling. Solving usually ends in a plan. Spiraling ends in more questions. When you find yourself looping, pause and ask, what's the goal here? If the answer is just, I want to feel better, then thinking harder isn't the way. Another gentle trick? Designate a worry shelf. Write the issue down. Literally. Tell your brain, you don't have to solve this now. It's saved. You can return later. Studies show this kind of externalization helps reduce cognitive load and anxiety. And then there's this soft truth. Not every feeling has a fix. Some emotions just want space. Not advice. Not analysis. Just space. Like a guest visiting your house. They're not moving in. You don't need to interrogate them. Just greet them, sit beside them, and let them pass when they're ready. There's also something called radical acceptance, a practice from dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. It's the idea that you stop resisting what already is. You stop mentally rewriting the moment. You say, okay, this is happening. And paradoxically, that acceptance becomes the doorway to change. Because here's the reality, trying to solve every emotional storm with logic is like trying to row through fog using a map. You don't need a better route. You need to sit, breathe, and wait for the mist to lift. You might also try a reframing ritual. When your thoughts start racing to fix it all, say to yourself, this isn't urgent. This is discomfort, not danger. Repeat it gently. Often. Your nervous system will begin to believe you. Because not all problems are puzzles. Some are poems. They don't need decoding, they need reading. Slowly. Softly. With wonder instead of urgency. So tonight, give yourself permission to stop fixing for a moment. To let the world be unfinished. To let your thoughts breathe without being filed into neat folders. And when you do that, when you stop clenching for answers, you'll notice something underneath: calm. Maybe not perfect calm, but enough to rest your mind. Which leads us to the beautiful part. Yes, your mind can calm. Yes, the switch exists. And yes, it can be flipped gently, without force or fanfare. Let's drift into that next. It might sound too good to be true, but yes, the calm switch exists. Not a magical button. Not a full system shutdown. Just a quiet shift in your nervous system that says, you're safe now. And even better news? You can learn to flip it. Right now, even as you listen, your body is gathering signals. Is the lighting soft? Is your breath slow? Is your environment threatening? Your nervous system doesn't wait for conscious input. It's already answering the question, are we okay? When the answer is yes, you move into parasympathetic mode, the rest and digest branch of your nervous system. Heart rate slows. Muscles release. The amygdala powers down. And the prefrontal cortex, the wise part of your mind, comes back online. That's the calm switch. It doesn't need overthinking to flip. It needs signals of safety. In one famous study on polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges, scientists observed that social connection, breath regulation, and rhythmic patterns, like music, gentle rocking, or humming, can activate this switch. It's not abstract. It's biology. And you can engage it without changing your whole life. Start small. The breath is your most accessible remote control. When you exhale longer than you inhale, you tell your vagus nerve, stand down. Try this: breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 1, breathe out for 6. No need for fancy breathing apps. Just count and soften. Here's something interesting: even stroking your skin slowly, like running your fingers down your arm, activates tactile fibers that send calming signals to your brain. Your body literally responds to slow, intentional touch as a sign of safety. That's why massages, weighted blankets, and even hugging yourself work. You might find this surprising: the sound of your own voice, when it's gentle, low, and kind, can calm your system faster than external voices. That's because your brain registers your tone as a cue. So saying things like, "I'm okay," in a soft voice doesn't just feel comforting, it is comforting. Physiologically. And this brings us to self-regulation tools. These aren't just self-care fads. They're practical strategies grounded in psychological science. Things like progressive muscle relaxation: tense a muscle group, hold, then release. It moves tension out of your body like wringing out a cloth. Guided imagery: picture a place where you feel completely safe. Imagine the details. Sand under your feet. The smell of pine trees. The feeling of a warm breeze. Visualization isn't escapism, it's rehearsal for calm. Grounding exercises: focus on 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. Simple. Sensory. Anchoring. Now, there remains considerable disagreement among experts about which calm techniques work best. Some swear by breath work. Others lean into somatic movement, or mindfulness, or cold exposure. But the truth is, the best one is the one your nervous system responds to. You don't need to pick the perfect practice. You just need one that brings you even a little relief. And remember, your system has memory. The more often you visit calm, the easier it is to return. Like a well-worn path. At first, the trail is overgrown. But with repetition, it becomes familiar. Easier to find in the dark. Here's a quirky practice you might enjoy: butterfly tapping. Cross your arms over your chest, place your hands on your upper arms, and tap gently, left, right, left, right. This bilateral stimulation can reduce anxiety and help regulate emotions. It feels a little silly. And it works. You don't have to go it alone either. Co-regulation, feeling safe in the presence of someone calm, is just as powerful. Sometimes, being near someone who isn't anxious is enough to reset your system. Even hearing a warm, relaxed voice, hello, audio script, can shift your state. And let's talk about ritual. Small, predictable actions that your body associates with calm. Lighting a candle. Making tea. Putting on soft socks. These aren't frivolous. They're cues. Anchors. Signals to your ancient nervous system. We've done this before, and we were safe then too. Because the calm switch isn't dramatic. It doesn't come with a jolt. It arrives quietly, like fog lifting. Like a sigh. Like the moment you realize you don't have to finish the thought to let it go. You may notice it when your jaw unclenches. When your breath drops into your belly. When your thoughts start feeling less urgent, less sticky. And no, it doesn't mean your problems vanish. It just means your mind doesn't treat them like an emergency. That's the difference. That's what calm is. It's the space between stimulus and spiral. It also helps to create what's known as a calm map. Write down 3 or 4 things that help when your brain is loud. Not when you're feeling amazing. But when you're stressed, frazzled, and fried. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's walking barefoot outside. Maybe it's watching golden retriever videos for 10 minutes. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you know the path, even when it's hard to see. So tonight, trust this, calm is not far. It lives beneath the noise. Beneath the spirals. Beneath the fix-it reflex. It's accessible. Not every second, but more often than you think. And now that you've learned the switch exists, our next stop is knowing when, not how, to let go. Because sometimes, the bravest thing your mind can do, is nothing at all. Let's go there together. Letting go. Sounds lovely in theory, right? Like releasing a balloon, or floating downriver on a lazy afternoon. But when your thoughts are tangled up in worry, guilt, or fear, letting go doesn't feel peaceful. It feels irresponsible. Like you're dropping the ball. Like you're inviting disaster. That's the real reason we hold on so tightly, to thoughts, to control, to the constant mental grip. We're afraid that if we let go, something bad will happen. The overthinking part of you believes it's the only thing standing between you and chaos. But here's the truth, letting go isn't giving up. It's not surrendering your values. It's not becoming passive or careless. It's the moment when you stop trying to solve what can't be solved, fix what isn't broken, or control what was never in your hands to begin with. And letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying. You might find this surprising. Researchers in mindfulness studies have found that people who regularly practice non-attachment, not clinging to outcomes, thoughts, or emotions, report lower anxiety and greater life satisfaction. Not because their lives are easier, but because their minds are lighter. There's a simple yet powerful practice from acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT leaves on a stream. Picture each thought as a leaf floating by on a gentle stream. You don't grab it. You don't analyze it. You don't chase it downstream. You watch it pass. Even the annoying thoughts. Especially those. That's not ignoring your problems. That's acknowledging them without obsessing. Observing without absorbing. There remains considerable disagreement in psychology circles about when it's best to work through a thought versus when to let it be. Some argue that avoidance can be harmful. Others say analysis becomes avoidance in disguise. The middle ground? Let go when the thought has no clear action. Stay only when there's something to learn, and you're in the right state to learn it. Because some thoughts show up just to be heard. Not fixed. And the more you try to argue, explain, or counter them, the more power they gain. Think of it like trying to calm a toddler by giving a TED talk. It rarely ends well. So how do you know when it's time to let go? Start with this question: is this thought helping me right now? If not, if it's just looping, judging, rehashing, then it might be time to loosen your grip. Here's a quirky little trick: write the thought down, and put it somewhere funny. Tape it to your fridge. Put it in a shoebox. Draw a cartoon version of it. This gives you psychological distance. It turns the thought into an object, not a truth. And it becomes easier to say, I don't need to carry this today. And yes, some thoughts come with hooks. What if I forget something important? What if I seem selfish? What if they think? Those are sticky. Letting go of them feels risky. But holding them forever is heavier than you realize. There's a technique from meditation called noting. When a thought arises, you simply label it: worry, planning, judgment. Then let it float on. Like tagging a butterfly. You don't catch it. You just notice. That soft label creates just enough space between you and the thought to loosen its grip. And in that space, your nervous system exhales. Because sometimes, all your mind wants is to be told, you don't have to figure this out right now. That it's okay not to have answers. That being human is allowed to feel messy and unresolved. You probably won't know this, but the brain is wired to close loops, to finish the story. That's why cliffhangers bug us, why we keep returning to unresolved conversations in our heads. But if you can tell your brain, this story isn't over yet, and that's okay, you're training it to be at peace with the pause. And here's something unexpectedly beautiful: letting go doesn't mean the thought won't come back. It probably will. But every time you release it again, it gets a little lighter. A little less sticky. A little more like background noise instead of a full-blown musical number. Try saying this to yourself: I give myself permission to stop carrying this. Say it once. Say it 10 times. Say it until your nervous system believes you. And remember, you're not weak for letting go. You're strong enough to know that holding tighter wasn't helping. Tonight, imagine yourself standing beside a river. The water is cool, calm, constant. One by one, place your worries on little boats. Let the current carry them downstream. Not lost. Not ignored. Just released. Even if they float back later, that's okay. You've practiced the art of letting go, and you can do it again. And now that the grip has softened, the next question is simple, tender, and a little revolutionary. What if this piece could last longer than tonight? What if, with slow intention, you could create days that feel quieter, thoughts that feel gentler? That's where we'll drift next, into the everyday rituals that help you build a new mental rhythm. You felt it now, those quiet moments when your thoughts slow, your breath deepens, and the pressure lifts. Maybe just a little. Maybe just enough to make you wonder, could this become my new normal? The answer is yes. Not perfectly. Not every day. But yes, you can build a quieter mind. Not by force, but through rhythm. Through small, consistent habits that say to your nervous system, this is home now. Creating mental peace isn't about changing your entire life overnight. It's about consistency over intensity. Gentle rewiring. Daily practices that whisper to your brain, we don't live in the emergency anymore. Let's start with the morning, the first fragile hour of your day. How you begin can shape how you think, how you feel, and how your thoughts respond to stress later. Most of us wake up and immediately reach for our phones, inviting in the entire internet before our feet even hit the floor. Try something else. Wait 5 minutes. Just 5. Breathe. Stretch. Let your brain orient itself to the real world, not the digital one. That tiny space becomes your buffer zone, your conscious entry into the day. A soft boundary between sleep and the scroll. And in those first few waking moments, you can ask a question: what kind of thoughts do I want to invite today? Not how much do I need to get done or what did I forget? But what thoughts feel nourishing? Helpful? Gentle? You're setting the tone, not just reacting. One powerful daily tool is journaling. Not the Dear Diary kind, unless that's your style, but a quick, messy brain dump. Morning pages. 3 lines. Whatever's buzzing in your head, write it out. No grammar, no structure. Just offload. Studies show that expressive writing reduces mental clutter and increases clarity. You might find this surprising. Keeping a consistent bedtime ritual reduces anxiety over time, even if the ritual is only 10 minutes. Why? Because your brain thrives on predictability. When your evening flows the same way each night, tea, music, stretching, whatever your rhythm is, your nervous system learns. Now we shift into calm. And this matters, because mental habits are built the same way as physical ones, through repetition. Every time you redirect your thoughts instead of spiraling, that neural pathway strengthens. Every time you pause and breathe instead of react, you make the next moment easier. There remains considerable disagreement among experts about what the ideal mental wellness routine looks like. Some swear by meditation. Others push gratitude lists. Some lean into movement, nutrition, community. But here's the universal truth: the best system is the one you'll actually use. The one that feels natural enough to stick. Soft enough to come back to. One trick? Anchor your new habits to something you already do. For example, after brushing your teeth, you say one kind thing to yourself. After boiling the kettle, you take 5 slow breaths. After closing your laptop, you stretch your shoulders and unclench your jaw. These are called habit stacking techniques, and they help new rituals feel less like one more thing, and more like part of life. Here's something delightfully human: your brain responds more strongly to sensory cues than abstract thoughts. Meaning, if you want to create more calm, don't just think about it, feel it. Wrap yourself in something soft. Light a candle with a familiar scent. Play music that signals, this is a safe space. Over time, your body will start responding before your brain catches up. Another helpful idea? Digital detox days, or even hours. You don't have to go full off the grid. Just pick a slice of time when your brain doesn't have to filter content. Sunday mornings. Tuesday nights. 20 minutes after dinner. No screens. Just space. Real, old-fashioned boredom. That's where creativity and clarity tend to live. And when your thoughts get loud, because they will, remember, you have tools now. You can hum. You can name the thought. You can step outside. You can put your hand on your chest and whisper, "We've been here before. We're safe." You've gone from reacting to noticing. From gripping to letting go. From spiraling to softening. And with time, those little changes compound. Like interest in a savings account. Quiet earns more quiet. Peace earns more peace. Until one day, you realize the hamster wheel isn't spinning like it used to. Your mind still moves, but now, it knows how to rest. So tonight, as your day winds down, maybe ask one last question: what could I do tomorrow that would feel kind to my mind? Not big. Not perfect. Just kind. Then tuck that thought under your pillow. Let it be a small promise to yourself. A promise that peace isn't a one-time event, it's a rhythm you're learning to keep. And with that, we drift into the final hush of the evening, a gentle wind down to carry you softly into sleep. Now we slow it all down. The pace. The pressure. The need to be anything but here. In this moment. Let your shoulders drop just a little more. Let your eyes soften, whether they're open or gently closed. You don't need to change your breath. Just notice it. Inhale, slowly, and exhale, softer still. Whatever you did today was enough. Whatever didn't get done, that's okay. There will be more days, more chances. And right now, none of that matters. Feel the weight of the blankets. The coolness of the sheets. The quiet around you, settling like snow. Your thoughts may still come and go, that's natural. Let them. They're like waves brushing the shore. You don't have to hold them. Just watch them arrive, and gently roll away. If there's tension in your jaw, release it. If your hands are clenched, soften them. Imagine your whole body sinking 1 inch deeper into comfort, into rest, into now. You've done something beautiful tonight. You showed up. You listened. You made space for calm. Even if it was messy. Even if it didn't feel easy. That matters. You matter. Tomorrow will come. But not yet. For now, just breathe. Just be. And as the night carries you forward, remember, your mind knows how to rest. Your heart knows how to soften. And your body, tired, brilliant, resilient, knows how to sleep. So let go. Drift. Float. We'll be here next time you need the quiet.